Well, hello, Dufferin County. Welcome to That Thing Called Life. I am Kelly Maddox, and I'm here with my best friend and partner in crime, Hazel Piacentini, a.k.a. Hazel Bebe. And today we're talking about family dynamics. And we think that, you know, it's a timely topic because most of us, some of us, will be probably spending time with family over the next few weeks as we approach the holidays. And for some, it's an easy thing, and for others, it's not so easy. So we wanted to take a look sort of at the full scope of family dynamics, and throughout we'll kind of talk about some things to think about as you go into these situations that, you know, if you're nervous or, you know, it's a different time of year for certain people, that you can use, and they're small things, but they will have a big impact, I think.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, I think. Well, the holidays. Well, anytime you get together with family is always interesting, and just watching what goes on. But helping yourself be prepared, is something that's kind of important. Yeah,
and by the way, these are techniques you use throughout. You know, we're coming up on, you know, the December time frame of holidays, but, you know, you get together for a bunch of different things, including summertime and family vacations and that sort of thing, as well as the dynamics around friends, because Hazel and I both know this, that, you know, our family is not necessarily all blood related.
Right.
We have friends that we consider more than family, actually, than our blood relatives. So what I think we'll do, though, is we want to start talking to people about what do we mean by family dynamics, right?
That's a really good big question. When I think of family dynamics, or when I think of any interpersonal dynamics, because that's really what it is, it's the kind of the play between you and me.
Right.
It's the play between one-on-one, Kelly to Hazel, but it also then includes the play with Kelly, Hazel, and Matt. So it's that, how do we all get along? How do we work with each other? How do we talk to each other? And how do we make each other feel?
Yeah, and it's it can be the role we play within the family. And by that role, by the way, pardon me, that role can change based on who's in the room, what time of year it is, why you're all gathered together. The dynamic can shift and shift fast. Yeah. And so, as we were saying, being prepared for that is really essential. So let's talk about roles, people's roles. And are they sometimes given, or do we fall into them and we play the role ourselves?
Here's what I believe. I believe in that birth order plays a part of all of that.
Right.
Because the firstborns usually have the hardest times in a family, that there's a lot of rules put around them because it's the first.
They're the practice kid.
Right.
Like my first marriage. It was a practice marriage.
Okay. True. Mine too. So I think there's that. So there's a sense of responsibility. There's a sense of, you know, if something happens to the parents, that really is the child who tries to assume the parental role afterwards, right? Or so maybe even before.
Are you saying, we can use mine, where my mom died when I was quite young, and my sister was 5 years older, and she really did
take over.
And that caused huge issues down the road in our relationship and the way our dynamic worked in the family, just because that her role as a child and her role of a sister flipped to a young adult, if not adult, mothering her young sister.
And what, you know, when you look at that particular, when I look at my older sister too, what needs of hers were kind of put aside so that she could look after us.
Right.
Because when we came to Canada too, my sister had to assume that role because my parents were at work in 2 jobs each.
Right.
Right? So there was nobody else to kind of apparent to us.
Sometimes a family comes by naturally. Nothing necessarily happens like a death or a divorce, or it's just the function of the family because of circumstances. Right. So that's the older child.
It's the older child.
Right. And
then there's the middle people.
Right.
And there could be, so there's 4 in my family. So there's 2 kind of middle.
Right.
Usually middle means 3.
Right.
Right. But there's a group of middle people in my family, which is interesting because my sister and my brother are like a year, 15 months apart.
Right.
And then there's 5 years between my brother and I. So it's quite interesting. The other thing I think that plays a factor in it as well is gender.
Okay.
Right. So when I look at my family growing up, my brother was allowed to get away with some things that the girls didn't. The girls had to clean. They had to cook. My brother didn't have to do that. And that I think came from a lot of the cultural background too. We grew up in Ireland.
And the time.
Yeah,
right? Because it was the late 1800s when you were born, or early
17.
1950s?
Let's say 17.
Okay. I always have to get that in there.
You know, you're not that far away from me, kid. So I think those 2 things play a role. I think birth order. When you get to the youngest child or the only child, and let's talk about the youngest child first. The youngest child is all of the other siblings ahead of that person have played by the rules, broke the rules. This one really is in a world of its own. They don't necessarily have to take responsibility for anything, really.
Yeah, certainly. And so then that speaks to, this is great, because that speaks to the dynamics of the family. Yeah. So I'm the youngest, but I was even more responsible because of our family circumstances and my mom leaving, and then my sister left home because she didn't like the person my father remarried. Right. And then I was sort of left with, all of a sudden, my mom had passed. Now my sister was gone. Now there's this new family in my house, and I have to adjust because I'm still small, so I can't make those decisions for myself.
So interesting. You came from being a youngest child who was being looked after to now you're being an only child.
Well, yes, even though there was a stepsister on the scene, I really was very much like that. But then, to your point, when I think about Matt, my husband's family, he is the 4th, and he's the baby. And by the time he came on the scene, everybody else was grown and, for the most part, out of the house.
So again, an only child, really.
Well, absolutely, but I do think that he probably got away. He might disagree with this, but I do think he may have gotten away with a little bit more. I think he was sort of the apple of his mother's eye, and maybe they just were tired of, taking care of kids. You're on your own. Kid.
Find your own way.
There is a picture of him on our fridge in a playpen. You know, those old school where we all used to get our heads stuck. And it's just like in the middle of his driveway in Richmond Hill, and I'm like,
he was out
those were the days,
sunbathing.
Yeah,
but it's true. I think so. I think the role that you are in the family. The other piece of the role is the character traits. So I was always labeled as the sensitive one. Right. So even till a couple of years ago, I was labeled as the sensitive one. So, which is quite interesting, because I think the person that was labeling me was more sensitive than me.
Yeah.
So
I would have never. Have never in our tenure of being best friends, I never would have tagged you as sensitive. You're very empathetic, and you're in tune to the needs of people. But I actually find you do have a bit of a hard exterior.
I can be hard
about you. So did you have a dime or anything? See, I'm not the only one that does it, people.
I didn't.
But yeah, so I find it interesting that your family, and again, right, I think we have to recognize, and this is really very true as we grow and become an adult family, is that our family will often place us in those roles, and we'll sit in those roles, and we'll live in those roles, and then all of a sudden 10, 15, 20, 25 years later, we're so different.
So different. And you know what was interesting, and I think I told you about this story, was think it was last year, I had my family over. It was after Christmas, mind you, and we'd reconnected with somebody that we knew when we were all younger. And sitting back and just watching how the four of us actually treated each other like we did when we were kids.
Right.
But again, not knowing there has been miles between us that you don't know me anymore.
Yes.
So you're treating me like I'm a 5-year-old kid again, but I'm almost 60.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting that when we get in that setting, we go back into that familiarity, I would say, of how we were when we were growing up. And we take that, unless you're actually
being thoughtful about it.
And mindful, right? In terms of paying attention to what the heck is going on and what's really triggering the feeling.
Well, and you know what's interesting is we get into, we're cutting to break shortly, but as we get into the next segment, you know, we're going to talk about the fact that you have to want to change that perspective and that assumption.
Yes.
And so you, not only do you have to identify, okay, what is my role? Do I want to be in this role anymore?
Right.
And what does that mean to the person on the receiving end?
Well, and be, again, mindful of that they may not like that change in you, or they may not like the change in the dynamics, because now you're able to step forward as the person that you really are, as opposed to playing the part again. Yeah. Of who you were when you were younger.
And again, that shifts everything.
Oh, it does. People don't know how to deal with you.
No. And it was interesting because we were preparing for the show, pardon me. I was reading about how healthy family dynamics are ever changing.
Absolutely.
They're ebbing and flowing, and the minute you fall into your roles and you stay there and stagnate there, that's when the miscommunication and the failure to understand and the resentment really comes to fruition. And sometimes we can't, because we're either too young. In my circumstance, I didn't understand why all of a sudden my sister was gone, and so I resented her for a long time for leaving, until I was old enough to understand why she left. And that alone can shift a relationship later in life.
Absolutely.
It can bring it together, or it can pull it apart, right? And I think in my sister and in my case, it brought us together, because I was I understood she didn't leave me because she wanted to leave me. No. She left because she needed to leave for her. And so I was able to sort of open up and let her in a little bit more, because I wasn't angry. You know, I completely understood it. And so sometimes I think we fall victim to familial circumstances. And what I would say is, you know, in our youth, it's one thing, but if you know, you're watching the show right now and you're an adult and you have some dynamics that maybe aren't sitting well with you, or not feeling too great about, then think about why the situation is the way it is today as an adult. And really sort of start, and we're going to talk about this, you know, as we're just about to go into break, but as when we come back, we're going to talk about how to identify those roles and understand them, and understand what your responsibility is in the family dynamic.
I think it goes back to the question too, is what do you want?
Right.
I mean, and we're going to talk about
I want to go to break. That's what I want to do. So
right.
We will see you in a minute. Sorry. Okay, guys, welcome back. We're having a little family dynamic breakdown in the studio, because as you can see, the lovely Hazel baby has on this very festive necklace that my husband found for us, and she's chosen to put it on, and I've chosen not to.
She's just being a brat.
Yeah, just because I'm usually the defiant one, or as Hazel and Matt have said, deemed me the bratty one in the relationship. So thank you for that. Anyway.
And you live up to it very well.
I do. It's
you go out of
actually
your
the
way.
role I would
you
like. I'd like to play the role of the brat. So
good segue.
So we were looking for different information around family dynamics, and I loved this one quote. I hate reading quotes to people when you're watching, but it's really fast, and it says, "The story of my family changes with the teller." And that's what could be more true when we're talking about the way people see us and the way we see others in the family. And I think that, a lot of us would... Well, it's interesting. So for me, in my family, which if you watch the show, I don't have family left that I speak to. I have a sister and I have some cousins, and then I have an aunt and uncle that I do speak to, but my sister and my cousins I don't any longer. And I think it's because I'm sort of the black sheep. Well, my husband and I'm kind of like a soft gray. I haven't quite gone
completely
to the
black?
dark side yet, but that was sort of my role. And I believe I played into that role for a good chunk of time. Like, after my divorce, I think I really decided, all right, you want me to be the one that isn't successful in personal reasons, very successful in my career.
Yeah.
But in my personal life, you want me to be the one, there she goes again, making bad decisions.
Isn't that funny? Because that's exactly, one of the things when I was thinking about this whole show too, it's the expectations that are put on us by our families. So we're usually brought up to, finish school, go to university, go to college, get a well-paying job, be successful that way, be happy in whatever relationships, get married, have kids, and it's those expectations, I think, that not only help define what we want a little bit, but when we get to an age when we figure out that those are the expectations that I don't want,
that we don't want. Right. And that's why I had to cut ties with that side of my family, because I finally had identified my role in the family, and it was no longer, it wasn't who I was any longer, and they didn't want to shift. And I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me personally.
Because they don't know how to deal with you, Kelly. When you make the change, and that's what I found with my family too, when they first found out the title that I had at work at one of the places that I worked with, they were very shocked that I didn't share that with them. I wasn't shocked because that was me outside of the family, outside of them. I didn't feel I needed to share that with it because, first of all, titles don't necessarily mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
But they were surprised when they got an email from my work email address that said, "I am this."
But why? So I'm going to stop that.
Well, it was interesting. No, let me finish. It was interesting. God, I feel like I'm on CNN. Let me finish.
Okay, sorry.
It was what was fascinating for me was the comments that came after. Why didn't you tell us? And you should be proud. You should be proud because you didn't finish high school.
Oh.
Yeah. And I thought, that's exactly why I didn't tell you.
So you kind of already, because where I was going before you so rudely cut me off was, why was that important to them? What does it matter?
Because in their mind, I was the kid that didn't finish high school. It didn't matter that I didn't finish high school and went back to college and got a college degree. That didn't matter. And they didn't see all the training that I took from work, from the corporate arena. They didn't see all that training. I didn't share any of that with them. But they had labeled me with this person who didn't finish high school.
Right.
And now I'm
what have you.
Whatever it was.
Right.
Right? And it's like, wow, didn't think you could do that.
Yeah, that's kind of so I get that. I get that, being the gray sheep in the family too. Like, oh, really? You've accomplished something.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let me ask you this, because I think this is important, because you and I, through our life coaching training, and I mean, we've been doing coaching now for over 10 years, and the coaching training alone was very deep work for, it was a 2-year stint for me, 3-year, because you went in and did leadership certification.
Right.
So, we're kind of self-evolved in that because we had to be.
Right. Well, it takes you really deep so you can actually understand your own motivations.
Right. So how are we helping, you know, our viewership and the people in the community that we do this show for identify what their role is, A, and B, then understand, do they really want to be that still?
Right. I think for me, one of the things that I'm constantly paying attention to are the words that come out of people's mouths. So the labels. So, you know, your high school dropout. That's a label. That doesn't necessarily mean who I am, but in their mind, that's who I am.
And by the way, does that mean beyond that, she's the dumb one? Or we don't expect much of her. And by the way, that's not to say, because I just got my grade 13 and that was it, and had a very successful career.
But disappointed, to the disappointment in their eyes, because I didn't finish high school.
Right.
Again, it doesn't matter that I went to college and university and took all the corporate courses that I took. That didn't matter to them. I didn't finish high school.
Right.
And so I was labeled
right
as that. And then to all of a sudden for them to recognize that I am this in work. And I tell you, it was a VP. So it was a vice president job. And it's just like, wow, how did you do that? So it was almost a backhanded kind of compliment. So people, you need to pay attention to the labels and the words that people use around you.
About you.
About you.
Right.
So that will give you some inkling as to the role that you play within the family.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And be observant, right?
Yep.
So I figured out that I was the black sheep when I kind of was not ignored around, and I'll say Christmas because but you know, we'd go out to where my family is and have a big Christmas dinner, and I was sort of a secondary player.
Yeah.
And I think the assumption was that she doesn't have much to offer, so, you know.
Right.
Let's not engage too much.
Yeah.
And I realized that. I realized, why am I feeling like a second-class citizen at my family's dinner table?
Yeah. And that's another clue, is how do you feel when you're around them?
Right.
How do you feel when you're in this situation where all of your family is there? What are the feelings that are coming up for you? What's being triggered? Right? So it's the labels, and listen to that.
To your intuition about that.
Yeah. It's the labels. And you also, I think, first and foremost, have to be grounded going into the situation. Like, you've got to be strong in who you are. Because what was interesting for me when I had my family together and I recognized that, oh my God, we're all back when we were youngsters. I know that's an old term. You may not know it. But when we were younger.
When you're a small can.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
I don't even know what that was. But I was sitting around the table just watching this all play out. And I sat back and I thought, wow. So I had a choice to make. I could have sat back and been in that role, the sensitive one, the quiet one. But I made a decision at that point in that I actually physically sat up to the table like this and participated in the discussion. But that was what I wanted to do.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that I was overpowering. I was just in the discussion.
Right.
Right.
You were asserting yourself.
Yeah, and it's
you-ness.
your presence. It's the presence that you give off too, because I think that plays another part of how people relate to you. The energy that you're giving off before you, like when you walk into the room, you give off energy.
Sure.
Right, and people react to that.
Yeah.
And you know, we've all done this. I've walked into a room and there's people that I think, not really keen on that, and then this one I gravitate to.
Yes.
Because I'm picking up on their energy in terms of what they're presenting.
Right.
So I think even in the family we do that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as you're going through different ways of assessing what role you play, ask.
Yeah.
You know, if you're feeling something and you're just not sure.
Check it out.
And yeah, and by the way, it's not necessarily, I mean, we're talking about experiences that can be difficult because let's face it, this is a difficult time of year.
Right.
But when we're sort of talking full scope about dynamics and dynamics with people, you know, it's funny. We were visiting somebody yesterday, and the gentleman's very, he's an empath. And by the way, I am too. But I'm also a little grizzly, right? I'm a little sharp-edged.
I would never have guessed that.
No. And the wife, she's a little bit like me. She's soft and she's lovely, and I adore her. But they said, they were talking about just being abrupt about something. And I said, well, you know, it's like if somebody were to come up and they got a vibe from me that I didn't really like them, I would say, like if they said, I kind of feel like you don't like me, I would say, I don't. So, but that's okay. I don't have to, right? It's not the end of the world. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being sort of upfront about my feelings with people. By the way, it doesn't happen that often that I don't like somebody, but I can give off some pretty strong vibes when I'm uncomfortable or I'm upset about something.
I think part of that, though, too, Kelly, sorry, I did mean to cut you off.
No, you did. That's fine.
Part of that, too, is where you get your value from. So some people need to have validation from outside as opposed to validation from inside.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying about asking. So don't be afraid to ask. You might not like the answer you get.
Yeah.
But you've asked the question, and if somebody's going to answer it, they're probably answering it. You'll know whether they're answering it
you will.
genuinely or not.
You will.
And I think that, again, comes from, I don't want any role anymore in life. Yeah, I'm a wife. Yeah, I'm a best friend. Yeah, I, work here. And yeah, I have this social circle that I hang around. But I don't want to be the sweet one. I don't want to be the angry one. I just want to be who I am. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, that's okay. But I am done changing myself for other people. And I'm striving, like the show we did before, talking about being your best you. Yeah. I got to get down to business on this. And so I am not going to sugarcoat, and I'm not going to pretend. I won't be hurtful.
No. But that also means you have to be grounded in who you are. You kind of have to like yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we start changing to be what other people want or need, then we hurt ourselves, because then we're putting our wants aside. Well,
and then we're getting ready to go to break again, but then you're giving the role that people are placing you in life.
Right.
And if you give it life, it won't change.
You're actually giving them power over you.
Well, that's just it, right?
Because once they have labeled that, you've got that label on you, then that's the role that you play. That's what they're expecting. That's how they know. They know how to deal with that. When you come out and change, like when you go through your transformation,
they can't change the prescription.
They don't know how to deal with you, because they can't figure out. That's not who the person is that I know.
Their role has to change.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And then they have to look at themselves. So we are going to throw to break, and then we will be back. Yeah, I think... Alrighty, we're back. Hazel baby.
Yeah.
We're back. Pay attention to me.
Sorry. Again, I forgot. It's all about Kelly.
That's the family dynamic here. I'm the leader. Okay, so another one. I found some great quotes, but this one.
Usually it's me giving the quotes.
But mine makes sense. Yours are like
Mine makes
I'm trying to figure out, there's birds chirping.
Oh, I'm going to go back on my
Yours
quotes.
are so existential and deep, right? Mine are just straightforward. So I love this one. She wanted to ask him why they were all strangers who shared the same last name.
Interesting, isn't that?
Yeah, I think it hit home for me specifically, because I know my family has no idea who I am anymore.
No.
And what a shame, because I think they're missing out on the best Kelly that has sort of walked this earth. I know. Now that sounds like something you would say, but I think they're really missing out on something special. And by the way, that's okay, because there's other people now that are in my world that I consider family,
Right.
that are getting the best of what I have
Right.
to offer.
Right.
So, but it was an interesting, we can be family and we can be sitting across from each other and not know really who the other one is.
I think that is so true. And I think part of what I've experienced is that because of those labels, I'm putting it down to this, because of those labels, because of the way when we were all younger we interacted, I didn't want to share with them who I was. Mm-hmm. And as I grew, I never changed the assumptions that they had about me.
Right.
And I think that plays a big role in terms of, it's the assumptions that people have of you, that's how they treat you.
You love your assumptions.
I love assumptions.
I'm going to make an assumption right now that we're going to change the topic of assumptions and move on to preparing for the holiday season. So,
Okay.
And it's really, being thoughtful about the different gatherings that you're going to be participating in.
Right.
And
here's the other thing, though, about that. You can say no.
oh, thank you. So that was like, you stole my big
sorry.
crescendo for the end, because I was going to
Pardon.
say, so here's the thing. Let me give you an example. Matt and I have been invited to 2 Christmas open house parties, and they're both back in Aurora. And both parties are going to have people at them that we absolutely adore and we miss.
Right.
Some of which we haven't seen since we moved here to Orangeville. And we want to go. Last year, I wasn't ready to go.
Right.
I wanted to go. I missed some of the people, but I wasn't strong enough to be able to walk in and go. I'm going to be a part of the goodness that is in this space, but I refuse to participate in the negative and the drama. I won't do it. And I knew that if we went back last year, there would be people that would draw me in,
Yep.
and this would get me in trouble because I would just blip. And so now I know this year, unless I'm asked, of course, I'm strong enough to just be like, it just doesn't matter to me anymore.
Yeah. But that strength is coming from you being grounded in yourself.
Right. So the
Right.
point is, don't be afraid. If you have something coming up, and by the way, it could be your family Christmas dinner.
Yep.
And if everything in your body is doing this, like, I don't want to go, don't go.
Yeah.
Don't go. And if you really feel compelled that you have to build in some self-care strategy. So fine, I'm going to go there, but I'm not going to pay attention to what my mother-in-law has to say about my cooking. And
you have to set the boundaries, right? So you have to be realistic about those boundaries, because walking in, or you can assume walking in, that you're going to be triggered in some way.
right.
So if you're grounded in who you are, that's where your strength is going to come from, and setting those boundaries about, like, even addressing it up front. Look, I'm not going to talk about my diet.
Right. Not interested.
Not interested.
I'm not getting married anytime soon. So don't ask me about it.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that. I think you have to set those boundaries so that people are not giving you those remarks.
Those zingers that get you deep down in here, right?
Yeah.
And every family has it. This is
Oh, yeah.
not an unknown feature.
No.
It's no different in our house. We have a certain topic that is a very sensitive topic in our house. And so, I have a beautiful sister-in-law who spends our Christmas at our house with Matt and I. It's just the 3 of us. But she knows there's a certain family member
that you just don't talk about.
We do not want to hear about.
You don't want that time to be filled with that drama,
No.
because that, if it is that you're allowing the dysfunction or the wants or the needs of somebody else to kind of rule the time that you have with everybody.
Right.
And that takes away from the joy.
Right. Yeah.
So setting the boundaries, I think, is important.
And it's teaching, you and I spoke about this last season. We did a show on communication skills.
Yep.
And it's teaching people how to treat you.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm no longer the baby that, can't contribute and sit at the big people's table. And, I'm no longer the person that, you couldn't drink around. Right. Or I'm no longer... you got to go in, you understand your role. If you're happy in your role, great. And if you're not, set your boundaries.
Yeah. I think another one, Kelly, which is...
and by the way, beforehand, sorry.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it. You can do it in the moment if something comes up, and you can do it in a lovely manner.
Yeah.
But if you can make something more comfortable for yourself ahead of time, do that. Set that stage work beforehand, because it will reduce your anxiety and stress about the situation.
Before you walk in the door, I would say, like in the car driving over, if you're thinking all this through in your head, right? Mm-hmm. Because one of the other pieces that I found, a wise woman told me this a couple of years ago, because I was having, especially after my dad died, I felt my role was to keep the family together, because it seemed like we were all drifting apart. Mm-hmm. And so my role, I expected to be able to bring the family together. And the thing that she said to me that triggered my mind was, let go of the expectations. So as soon as you let go of how you're expecting other people to behave or what they're going to say, there's weights lifted off your shoulders when you let go of those expectations. So I don't expect you to look after me anymore.
Right.
I don't expect anything from you, actually. Mm-hmm. And that way you come at relationships from a whole different perspective.
Yeah, it's very good advice.
I thought it was...
Did I say that? Was that me that said that?
You. No, it wasn't you.
I'm not the wise woman in your life? There's a surprise. So, and the other thing is, there's simple things you can do. So here's the deal. If you have loose lips when you have too much to drink, don't drink too much. Yeah. If you know that your Uncle Joe has the worst stories in the world, or he might, swear too much, don't sit beside him. Yeah. Don't get into political discussions if you know it's going to be a slippery slope.
Well, I think to that point, which is really interesting with what's going on in the world these days, is that you can't go into these situations and expect to change people to your way of thinking. Again, that goes back to the letting go of the expectations and losing the control thing, right? Because if we expect people to agree with us, they're not going to. And that's okay.
Well, and okay, so this is another good technique and strategy, is if you know that Auntie Jean is a staunch liberal and you're a staunch conservative or NDP, whatever. But you know you're going to go at things like this, and it comes up. Listen and be respectful, and either go there in a respectful way or just don't go there at all. Just let the individual do what they need to do and walk away. If you can circumvent the situation, great. If you find yourself landed with,
I love the phrase. That's really interesting. Hold on to that thought. I got to go to the bathroom and get out of the situation.
Yeah. Because you're not being disgenuine. No. You're just removing yourself from a situation that could possibly be very, very uncomfortable. And so so if you can do some pre-work on laying the ground rules, I always want to know who's there. Well, so if I'm going into a sticky situation, I want to know what mucky situation I may or may not be going into. And then what we've done, Matt and I have talked about both these parties, and we're going to both of them, but we've also talked about, okay, so if these individuals happen to cross our paths, what are we going to do?
So you have a strategy going in.
We have a strategy for every person that we might come across that might be a bit of an icky situation. And we've built in, we're going for an hour and a half. That's all we're going for. It's a long drive.
Yeah.
So we can get in, we do what we need to do, we get out, and we stay within each other's line of vision.
Yeah.
Because that's what we need to do to be able to go in there.
Absolutely.
And me not end up, you know, with a black eye.
Or somebody else with
or
a black
muzzle.
eye. Well, the muzzle. I'd like to see you put the muzzle, Matt. Here's one of the other things that I've learned, and I'm still learning, but it's that participant observer.
Right.
So when I was doing some of the work on this too, they found games. So the participant observer is actually one who sits back, still participates in the situation, but observes what's going on.
Right.
Right. So one of the things they talked about, and I love this one, is dysfunctional needs bingo.
Okay.
And so you do this with a group of your friends.
Right. So this is not your family.
No, this is not your family. You do it with your friends. You create a bingo card.
Right.
That's got things on it like someone asks you when you're going to get married.
Yeah.
So you put that on one of the squares, or Uncle Al is drunk again.
Right.
You put that on one of the squares. So you
Right.
fill up the cards. I think there's 9 squares on the bingo card, right?
Right.
And then you all separately go to your functions, but you're ticking off when these things happen.
I love it.
And so you can call each other or text each other to say, got my card full.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's only been half an hour.
Yeah, I've only been here 30 minutes. My card's full.
Right? And you make that kind of a game out of it. And then you get together at the end, and whoever's got the one with the most squares ticked off,
right.
The others can buy you lunch or dinner or something.
I love that. And then you can honestly, then if you're doing it with a group of girlfriends, you can all debrief on.
Because I think that's the other important thing, Kelly, in terms of the debrief. If you have close friends that you can talk about afterwards,
yes.
You can even actually look at this as, you look at the stuff that happens as comedy material. Mm-hmm. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and share the stories with your friends. And just even vent.
Yeah, so it takes the edge off and the seriousness.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
And so, sorry, we're going to go to break. So we'll continue on that a little bit when we get back. And gosh, I was just zoning back to some of my previous Christmas.
Can you imagine?
Going, oh my goodness, I wish I would have had that.
I know.
But yeah, we are going to send it over to break, and we will come back with our final segment. Okay? All right, I'm wearing it. Does this make you happy?
Yes.
I'm feeling extremely festive right now. You have no idea how much this is thrilling me at the moment. Or if you want to survive Christmas at your family's house, just put a stupid holiday blinking light set on your head, and nobody will want to talk to you. They'll be so mesmerized by
That's beautiful.
the festiveness that you are exuding.
The festiveness.
The festiveness. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about being alone on Christmas, okay? Or being alone over the holidays. This is a really interesting time of year, and Hazel and I share similar perspectives on it, in that it's not my favorite time of year. Since I've met my husband, it's certainly gotten more fun and interesting, but for a long time it was just me by myself. I had some pretty lonely Christmases, and especially after my dad died, everything really changed around then. But I think it's really important to understand a few things. I'm of the mindset, and I think you are too, we don't need to be celebrating Christmas from November 1st to January 1st. Like, that's 2 months of celebrating and a day. And I think it's overload, and I think people get stressed out and overwhelmed by the amount. So you don't necessarily have to have, all the festivities and stuff starting back. Some people do, and it works for them, but some people don't need to. We don't even think about it until December 1st in our house. And even then we go pretty low key, because I do believe, to me, Christmas is a day. Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve, that's it.
Well, and I think it's become so commercialized.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can't afford to buy thousands of dollars in presents and all this food, and we just can't. It's just not. It doesn't. We can't do it. Yeah. So we don't put any pressure on ourselves. But I want to talk about beyond that. For those of you that might not have a traditional family dinner to go to, or you know, instead of doing what I did and really. It just made it worse for me, was I just stayed by myself. People would invite me out. I would say no. And I really just stayed home by myself. Yep. And I think it's important to do something.
I think there is too. I want to go back to being by yourself. It's okay for some people. I like being by myself, right? I think, though, that with all of this stuff that's around these days, the one thing that I'm learning is giving to other people. Mm-hmm. So I have a friend who volunteers her time to go feed the homeless.
Right.
Right. She's found a bunch of activities through a church organization that she goes to around this time. Mm-hmm. And she goes downtown to volunteer her time for that. And she said that has actually helped her get out of the feeling that she was alone.
Sure. And beyond that, because those are all amazing things. And we have a lot of things in our community that, pardon me, I'm just going to take this out because it's bothering. My producer said I could. We have a lot of things in our community that people can get involved in.
Right.
And so, but beyond that, you know, the cinema's always open. There's a really beautiful park light that we do, a big light. I think it's the King Club or Rotary. I apologize if I got that wrong. I think it's Rotary.
Light Festival?
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. So you can go take a walk. You can go, you know, order a pizza. There's Chinese places and pizza places. It doesn't, you can kind of turn the day into anything you want it to be. Yeah. And you can create your own traditions. I know, sorry, I have to do this. I know for when I was on my own, the last couple of years I was on my own, I did what we called a Misfits Christmas. So everybody I knew that was alone came to my house, and I cooked them dinner, and, you know, we did potluck, and we just hung out. And it was, those were a couple of really, really fun times, because I got to know some people in the community that I didn't know that well. Obviously, I knew them well enough to have them into my home, but
I think, though, that's one of the. I think that's really important in terms of, you know, throughout the year we don't necessarily spend as much time as we want to with the friends that we choose to be with, right? And I think around that time is an opportunity to make dates like that in terms of spending time with your friends that you want to be with, not necessarily that you have to be with, but that you want to be with, and that makes a difference too.
Yeah, and that can be choosing your friends over spending time with your family if that doesn't work for you, and that's not a comfortable thing for you. Yeah. And so I want people to know that I think sometimes the emphasis on this time of year is just way too strong on expectations and gift giving and, you know, all that stuff. And again, it drives me crazy is that we're talking about one day. It's one day in the whole year, and it really affects a lot of people sometimes in a very lonely, has a lonely impact on them.
Especially, as you said, after your dad passed, after my dad passed, because my dad passed at the beginning of December. Oh, put the green light in your ear. I like that. She's getting into the spirit.
I'm trying to put my earpiece back on, and I put one of these in my ear. My producer's going to kill me.
Because I think that makes it even more difficult learning. So you're learning how to cope with the dynamics of the family. You're learning how to cope with grief. You're trying to figure out new roles because the whole family dynamic has shifted, right? Yeah. So I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to even celebrate, right? You just can't find that thing, can you? You just want to put the red.
No, there should be a bloopers rule.
Oh, no.
A reel on the show.
I love it.
But, gosh, I'm sorry about that. I mean, I just think, you know, let's take the pressure off of this time of year, and it could be so much more special to just spend time with each other and not have to be.
So is there a place, Kelly, in Orangeville specifically, because I don't live here, is there a place, Kelly, that we could maybe share with people or tell them that they can go and look at in terms of some of the events that might be happening around town?
Well, yeah, for sure. So Facebook has that great Orangeville and area information page. I'm probably not calling it exactly what I need to be calling it, but it's a really good resource. And I think if you're looking for something to do on Christmas Day, reach out, get onto that. We have some, I cannot say this enough. This community, this Dufferin-Caledon community has some amazing people that live here. Like, just incredible. I just adore the people in this area. And, if you put yourself out there, I can guarantee you people will say, oh, we need volunteers over here. Or, we go for a walk around. There's 20 of us that go for a walk around Island Lake and then, go get Chinese. Or so if you're looking for things to do on Christmas Day, then that's certainly a great resource. And then, go to the town of Orangeville. There's lots of
different community services, right?
Yeah, there's lots of different church denominations, no matter sort of what religious you are or you're not.
Yep.
But there's probably lots going on. I'll guarantee you, Choices Youth Shelter and those types of organizations, pardon me, even maybe at the hospital.
Yeah.
Volunteering. But again, maybe it's just turning the day. I found for me, when I turned that day into just another ordinary day, it didn't seem so lonely.
Yeah.
It seemed like another day that, it was just a day off work. Or
well, they say, I'm not going to quote.
Okay, sure you're not.
They say that if you kind of get out of your head and help other people, you're not focused so much on yourself and what's going on in here.
Well, yeah, right? and that lends itself to everybody has a story.
Yes. Yeah.
It was kind of the reason we wanted to do this show in the first place, was that everybody has a story, and there's probably a lot of people out there that would love a kind face to talk to on Christmas Day, even if they're just so if you're volunteering somewhere, it will be making the world a difference in someone else's day as well.
Yeah,
so,
and that's one thing that you always have to remember. You actually don't know the impact that you have on people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have been in situations where people have come back years later and I don't even remember their name, telling me, what I said to them, and I don't remember, but it made a difference to that person. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind, because the simplest, kindest word can make such a difference and such an impact to someone who's maybe struggling.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I'll tell you, the first year my dad had passed. You can imagine. For me, I just lost my only other living parent, and he was pretty special to me. And my stepmom was flying us out to Miami Beach, because that's what my dad had started doing with us when my mom first passed away. So we used to go to Miami Beach every year, and that was our new tradition. So my stepmom actually quite thoughtfully did that the first year. I think it was probably a mistake in hindsight, and I was really struggling that day. And it was a bad snowstorm, and my flights were getting canceled, and I was airlines bumped, and I think I went down in New York, and I was supposed to catch my next connecting flight in a half an hour, and it got delayed by like 5 hours, and I finally got to Miami Beach the next day, and they had lost my luggage. And by then I was just like, if Dad was here, this would have never happened like this, right? It just made me miss him even more. Yeah. And people were grouchy because it had been snowstorms, and you're in an airport and you're all in winter clothes, and now you're in Miami and it's 85 degrees. And this one stewardess was coming off the plane, and I was coming off, and I was in tears by that point. And she said to me, you don't like flying? And I said, no. I said, that's not it. I said, it's just been a rough couple of days, and she said, well, if I can say something to you, the gentleman that you were sitting beside on the plane, he was a very nervous flyer. And she said, but he had went up and told her that she was so glad that he was sitting beside me because I was so kind and so sweet-natured that it made a huge difference in his flight. And I just thought,
you weren't even
wow,
trying to do that.
No, and what she had done, she gave me a gift.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, there's all those small things that can make a big difference. I try to live that every day. Yeah. We're rounding out the show again. We're on our way out. So any last thoughts about?
I just think, you know, again, be grounded in who you are and let go of the expectations of changing anybody, convincing anybody, and just watch. Yeah. Just be that observer that watches how it all plays out, and it'll give you some insight into all of it. Yeah. Really.
Yeah. I agree. And my final thought would be, if you don't like the role you're in, change it. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, it's about who you want to be. So.
Absolutely.
So yeah, with that, we are off, and I know it goes fast, and
it does.
But we will see you again in January. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks.